What's going on, everyone? Today we're here with Miss Andrea. Now, Miss Andrea follows the show, and she spoke to me in the background about a few things of where she lived and some of her experiences, and I think it'd be good for some of you to hear what she has been through in her life. Miss Andrea, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me, Phil.
So, Andrea, now, could you tell people a little bit about yourself and how did you stumble upon our brand of content?
Okay. Yes, I was born and raised here in northern Arkansas, and I actually live right next to the town where the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan is here in Arkansas. And so I grew up in a very, very white supremacy held environment, and I would say definitely more so than what you would find in the cities or in other, certain states, more than you'd see in California or New York or, certain areas like that. It's definitely, if you come here, it's like stepping back in time. So I always tell some people, if you want to see what your grandparents actually had to live through and go through, you can come down here and stay for a little bit, because things haven't changed at all here. It's definitely it's a difficult environment to try to raise your children in a different way, which I definitely subscribe to do. And people ask, why don't you just move away and raise them, somewhere better? And I think I always answer with, I would like to see change in this area. I don't want to see it, the Klan members win. And I feel like, there are very, very few, and I'm willing to say this, I think there's very few Caucasians anywhere that have really educated themselves about white supremacy and white privilege, and definitely less so here. And I feel like, if people like my family, like my husband and I, move our children out, it just leaves very little hope for change for the future, if that makes sense. Because, my son is only 8 years old, but he's already very socially aware, and he understands, I think, more than when you live here in general. You understand things at an earlier age when it comes to racism and white supremacy and white privilege, and my son is only 8, but he already understands more than what I would think most Caucasian children understand in other areas, just because of the area where we live. But he's got a very strong mind and a strong will, and I honestly believe to defeat white supremacy, it will take a new generation of different thinking white people, and it just feels like we give up if we leave. But it's definitely a different type of area. I can't say it better than David Banner. I listened to an interview with, do you know who David Banner is, the musician David Banner?
Yes.
I watched an interview with him. I don't know if you saw it, but he did an interview with the Breakfast Club. It was sent to me by my friend Eric Wright, who is actually the son of rap legend Eazy-E. But he sent me this interview this last week, and I watched it, and there's something he said in it, and it was about Mississippi, but I think it can definitely be, it definitely pertains to Arkansas also. And he said, I would rather be around white people in Mississippi any day of the week than white people elsewhere, because they will either kill for you, or they're not afraid to tell you that they wouldn't care to kill you. And I think that had so much truth to it. Just when I heard it, I was just like, wow, that is true, because there's just two extremes here. There's those of us who are just so tired of seeing things the way that they have been for generations. And then there are people that honestly would probably still not care to see the strange fruit situation playing out on a regular basis.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm speaking just as a parent. Okay.
Okay.
If you're living in a dangerous environment where you have a bunch of degenerates who are living in a past, type they want to live in, they are violent, they are terrorists. That's exactly what they have been.
They are terrorists.
For hundreds of years.
They are terrorists for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
So since you're living around terrorists, literally, do you think, especially with the environment your son's going to grow up in and his thoughts and what he say, do you think as a parent it's wise to keep your child? Maybe you think that maybe I can make a crooked branch straight, but what if your child says something and he's speaking against racism, and one of the Klan member kids' parents, or they get together and they want to attack your child? I mean, because that could possibly happen.
I understand, and I'll be honest. That's always been something that has scared me. And when I started on my journey of trying to educate myself, my grandfather expressed concerns for me. And it was something that I kind of shook my head at the time. I remember when I first, and it was a journey. I will be honest. I believe I was raised as a white supremacist. And then as I went on this journey to educate myself, my grandfather, he said, you don't understand. There are people around here that wouldn't care to do things to you either. It's just because you're white, it's not going to save you from that. And he was very serious. And at that time, I just I shook off his comments as, just either him not wanting me to educate myself further and be different than most people here. But now that I'm a parent, I look back at his comments and I feel so much more, compassion towards him for having that concern for me. And I have worried about that, because not only is my son more enlightened, he's also very vocal. He's not someone that follows the crowd. He'll be the first person to stand up if he sees something, going wrong. And, we're very, very protective parents. We don't let our kids go, out without being with them. Very protective. We don't, just let him, go out without us, either at the park or, we live in a very rural area, so we don't have neighbors like most people do. But if someone were to want to do anything to him, they would have to come, through me and his father first. And my hope, and whether it's an empty hope, I don't know. I hope not. But my hope is the older he gets and the more time that passes, the less we have to worry about it, because the more other people will join us, and we have seen a much bigger increase in people willing to speak out in this area than what used to be. As you see as you see more younger people getting older, trust me, not all of them. I've met plenty of younger kids that say things and believe things that are just unbelievable to me. But quite a few are in a different mindset than their parents and their grandparents, and my hope is that, you know, as time passes, just more and more will. I think for here it's a fear, and I hope that more and more people are less afraid.
Well, let's talk about the month of April. Why is the month of April so significant to the white supremacist terrorists?
I believe that started in the early 90s. The first incident that happened that white supremacists, especially around here, I also hear that like neo-Nazis in Idaho, states like that, seem to still really have this month of April mindset. The first thing that happened was the siege of Ruby Ridge, which I'm sure you remember.
Inform the audience about that, Andrea. What is that?
Ruby Ridge, and it's, you know, Ruby Ridge is weird because around here it was taught to me as a child as an example of the dangers of the government. That's how it was taught to me. And what it was a white supremacist. They like to call themselves white separatists, but let's face it, it is the same thing. White supremacists, a white supremacist family didn't want to face charges for sawing off shotguns for members of the KKK. They had sawed off some shotguns for someone that was in the KKK who turned out to be an FBI informant. The U.S. Marshal Service, I believe it was, and I'm not a historian, this is, you know, off of pure memory, and I was a child at this time, but the U.S. Marshal Service went in, and things were not handled correctly, and a 14-year-old boy and the mother in that family ended up getting shot and killed, and a U.S. Marshal was shot and killed. And so this enraged white supremacists, they took it as not anything to do with shotguns or with firearms. They took it as a personal attack on their white, quote-unquote, separatist beliefs. That the Zionist government was coming in to impose their martial law, their forced integration, etc., etc. And it wasn't, but I think the next year or maybe 2 years after that, the exact same day, I believe, if not the same day, within the same week in the month of April, the Waco incident happened.
Okay, David Koresh.
David Koresh, you're correct. And what's weird is that that church actually was very multiracial.
Yeah, David Koresh wasn't a white supremacist terrorist.
Right, it had nothing, but white supremacists sieged Waco when that was taking place. They came to the aid of David Koresh, and they kind of took a situation that had nothing to do with them, yet made it about them, about the government again coming to impose, laws on the people. And in that group, in that white supremacy group that drove to Waco, was a man named Timothy McVeigh. And what he saw at Waco and what had happened at Ruby Ridge enraged him. And he was already a bona fide racist. I mean, you know, this is not even an accidental white supremacist. This is a man who actively, you know, practiced racism, and he was a white supremacist. He saw what happened at Ruby Ridge and at Waco, and he wanted to get revenge. And so what he did was he bombed the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City and killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, I think 168 people, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, and yes, and this happened on April 20th. Or April 19th, I'm sorry. What happened on April 20th was two boys that were said to have, I've not read the police reports, but were said to have had sympathies towards white supremacy and neo-Nazi groups. Two boys decided that on April 19th that they would shoot up their school, that they would get revenge on their school, and they would shoot up their school. It turned out something on either they didn't have school on April 19th, so that they couldn't do it that day, so they did it on April 20th, and that was the Columbine massacre.
Wow!
So all of these incidents are related in that way, and all of them have to do with these neo-Nazi white supremacy type individuals deciding to take action for what they saw as the government imposing forced integration. That they like to use the word the Zionist government. And this is all in the month of April, and I'll be honest, I do not allow my children to even go to school on April 19th or April 20th.
That is crazy. I mean, just for me, just hearing that we've known that the month of April has some significance with them, but we didn't realize it was that deep. Now, this is the thing: if this were an Arab Islamic group doing all these acts of terrorism in this nation, they'd have tried to shut them down a long time ago.
We would have already been at war with another country.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So why is it that in your opinion, why is it that white supremacist terrorists can be in America, do these evil acts that you've talked about, so much so that you're afraid for your child to go to school on days that terrorist acts have happened? Why do you think they're allowed to stay in this country?
Because I think that even though they say that the government is their biggest, their biggest enemy, I think that there's a lot of people in the government that have the same viewpoints. They just, they can't exactly express it publicly. Well, now that we have the Trump administration, it's getting more acceptable for them to express it publicly and still keep their jobs. But I think that I completely believe that I read something that Frances Cress Welsing had said at one point, and it was before I read the ISIS papers. And it was a quote by her that, and this was at the very beginning of my journey of education and trying to get out of the mindset that I was raised in. The quote I read was, and it will be paraphrasing, so please nobody be upset with me for misquoting her. If you classify yourself as white, if you consider yourself a white person, never talk to a black person about racism until you read Racial Matters, which is basically a book about the federal government and its racism. And I did read Racial Matters. I believe it. Kenneth O'Reilly was the author of that, and I think anybody who reads that will understand why these people are not kicked out of the country. I think that obviously our country has hundreds and hundreds years history of making sure that that black men and black women don't have the same starting point as white men and white women. And there's reasons for that. This is not just the citizens, this is the government, and whether it's the completely unjust prison population, or it's the fact that I have no doubt that if any of the presidents had wanted to, they could siege these groups, these hate groups, and completely annihilate them, but yet they don't. And I understand that this is America and everybody has the freedom to believe what they want to believe, whether it's wrong or whether it's right. But I believe that when there's a solid, long history of violence and threats and just being terrorists in your own home country, I would feel like that would somehow mitigate their right to just congregate and be stupid.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
We're not just talking about like the Westboro Baptist Church. The Westboro Baptist Church is one of the most disgusting organizations I've ever heard of. Yet they never killed anybody. They never hung anybody from a tree. They never unjustly kept someone imprisoned, in modern day slavery. But yet, you've heard more about the Westboro Baptist Church the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years. Then you have groups like the KKK, which are very much active, that have a long history of violence and terrorism. And I think that it gives many people a very scary, false sense of security. But just to let everybody know, they're very active. I live in this community, and when I walk in the grocery store, there are times I look over and I have to see someone that I know is a terrorist, and there's no other word to describe them, shopping for groceries next to my family like it's nothing. Because we've gotten to a point in this country where the KKK is almost laughed at, like it's a joke, like they're a joke group, just because we don't see black men hanging from trees on a regular basis. But we still see black men and women unjustly shot by police officers, and in precincts where it's been proven that they've sent racist emails to each other, like very horrible racist emails. And the KKK has a history of infiltrating groups like the police departments and judges and any kind of profession you can imagine. So I think people have a false sense of security that just because you don't see people swinging from trees like in the 1940s, that they're not there. And I think what the truth of the matter is that they've just gotten smarter at where they go and what jobs they get and what they manage to do in public and what they manage to do in private. Because the leader of the KKK here where I live, his son is the top attorney in the town. He is the number one sought after attorney in this area. And so anyone who threatens, like violence against their property. At one point, someone managed to get up to one of their billboards. They have billboards everywhere here, sponsored billboards on our highways that display racist messages. And at one point, someone, I believe it was a young teenager, decided to vandalize one of the billboards and gotten quite a bit of trouble for it because, they got the top attorney, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's not a police officer or two on their side. I won't say all because we've had a lot of help from the police department around here, so I know that there are some on our side, but I wouldn't be surprised if if they haven't been infiltrated.
Yeah, well,
and it sounds like a huge conspiracy. Like I would sound crazy to someone who didn't understand that this was still going on, and I am not a conspiracy theorist at all. But this is real life. This really goes on. And
well, Andrea, what I was going to say when you was about the FBI, well, the FBI had did a report in 2006 stating that white supremacist terrorists were infiltrating police departments. They're still doing it every day. This is how they get away with doing their terrorist acts and waging their race war upon
I believe it was
of people of color.
Was it not Ferguson? Was it Ferguson where all the emails got released? And
Ferguson, I've done stories out San Francisco. Every time you look up, some email is being released about some police with some racialized animosity and being a terrorist.
I think that like just even some, and I'm used to hearing horribly racist jokes and horrible racist things, and because I was raised hearing it. And I remember when the Ferguson emails got released after Mike Brown was murdered, I was shocked by some of the things that the police officers were spreading back and forth to each other in these emails. Like, and it takes a lot to surprise me with racist comments and racist jokes. But I remember, I believe one specifically was, well, if a black mother goes in for an abortion, should we automatically start giving $5,000 tips to Crime Stoppers or something to that effect? Basically like, oh, well, when a black mother has an abortion, she's only aborting a future criminal. That was the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And the fact
that
that was going around in a police department who is in charge of protecting and serving an area that was basically, like, I think 92% African American. That's unacceptable. I mean, it's something I would expect here. But you know, when there's not many black people that live here. If they are, they're usually mixed. But the fact that was allowed to stand when these people are paid servants with our tax dollars to protect and serve the people of that county, I mean, if that's going on, there's just no telling what we don't know, what's not released.
So Andrea, I definitely thank you for joining us today and sharing with us what you did share with us. Now, if I lived in a town like that, me personally as a parent, I wouldn't be there, because you can't make a crooked branch straight. That's how I feel. I know you want to do a work over there, but when it comes to your children, it's a different thing at that point.
You know, I understand about making the crooked branch straight, but you know, at one point I would have considered myself a crooked branch. So, and now I've read more books, and I've educated myself to the point that I feel like I've made a crooked branch straight, and I've seen a lot of branches here, you know, change their shape, and even older people that I didn't think it would ever happen. And there's a lot of people here fighting back towards these billboards, towards this group. And I'm really hoping that by the time that my son is an adult, that, you know, and that he, along with these other children that are going to hopefully be raised in a different way, you know, raised straight instead of having to educate themselves straight.
All right.
That it will be better. That's my hope.
All right. Well, Andrea, I want to thank you for joining us on the show today. And, you know, if everybody, you know, leave comments, I'd definitely like to know what you think about this. And Andrea, look at the comments herself. If she wants to respond to them, she can. Andrea, we had to bring you back and get into some more conversation with you, that I definitely want to dig into that mindset in your area.
Yes, and let me just say, before we got to do our interview, poor Phil was working for quite a while trying to get this ready to go, and he's doing all this himself, and it's information people need to have, and you're spending your time doing all this. And I know that my husband and I are very, very proud to be patrons of yours, and I would say to anybody, you know, $5 is not much. It's half of a McDonald's meal. So that'll be my last thing that I say until we talk again.
All right. Well, Andrea, definitely thank you and your husband for being patrons of Patreon for sure. And you know, y'all stay safe out there, and then we'll talk again. I'll start asking some deeper questions the next time, since people kind of knew what you have going on now. So thank you, everyone, for listening.
I'll look forward to it.
And see you next time.